Hello, my name is Miguel Asensio, and for my virtual community event, I attended the Nave Beso conference on April 27th, 2021. The audience consisted mostly of bilingual teachers as well as bilingual teacher candidates. The speakers were Catherine Espinosa, Deborah Palmer, Catherine Henderson, and Claudia Trevino Garcia. Those would be the speakers I will be talking about during my presentation. And for my first presenter was Catherine Espinosa, and the title of her presentation was Bilingual Teachers as in Electros. And she, during her presentation, she brought up Vygotskian a few times, but this was the particular quote that kind of stood out to me. Just pretty much just saying that the development of the human personality really takes shape during the upbringing of the child as well during their learning years. So that for me, what it just pretty much stated is that as teachers, we should acknowledge that these years are very, very important for the development of the student. And as teachers, we should do our best to teach them in an efficient manner and taking advantage that, hey, these are the years that they're gonna get allowed. That's kind of shaping them to who they will be. So we should be responsible and not take it lightly. And then she also brought up the using of interactive dialogue journals, which is something that I hopefully, if I get the privilege of becoming a teacher one day, I definitely want to use this technique. So this just kind of helps them organize their thoughts and ideas and put pen to paper, and there's no agenda, nothing. It's just there's no right or wrong answer. It's just them expressing themselves, and hopefully they get to build communication skills, right? And I thought that was really awesome. And then the next presenters were Deborah Palmer and Catherine Henderson, and the title of their presentation was Las ideologías lingüísticas son importantes, developing critical consciousness for the bilingual classroom. And they brought up language ideologies, and I'm not going to talk about all of them, but the ones that stood out to me was that language ideology runs on a spectrum, right? So some people would say, hey, being bilingual is beautiful, which of course it is, right? But there are other people that don't believe that. There's some people that believe that because we're in America, we should be speaking English only. And then another one, the language hierarchy, right, kind of goes along with the one I just mentioned, is that the idea that some languages are more complex and sophisticated than others. And that's obviously not true. That's a backwards way of thinking. And it shouldn't be something that it's put out there. And because obviously every language is beautiful, it has its own history. And then they also talk about critical consciousness and how these four topics kind of make critical consciousness what it is. And the first one is historicizing, right? And what that means is essentially where our ideology comes from, right? How our ideology forms us and our ideas and the ideas that we put out into the world, right? Are they positive? Are they negative? Are they going to build people up or tear people down? And I thought that was really awesome to learn. And then the other one is critical listening, right? It's make sure that we listen with the intent to actually learn something and learn about our students and have a dialogue and make sure that we reflect on what they tell us, and that and sometimes, which is the next point, is that we're gonna engage in with discomfort, right? We're gonna bring topics that are kind of hard to navigate, such as racism, sexism, colonialism, poverty. It's probably topics that our students have experienced before, right? And if they have an experience, at least it gives them a different perspective, and they be able to empathize with people that have gone through situations such as those. And then interrogating power, right? So make sure that we question things, make sure that we speak up and push back and take a stand when we see injustices happening. Make sure that we're just not comfortable with such things, right? We need to be uncomfortable with racism, justices, and all those things that we could see in a negative, that could be a negative impact to our students. And then the last presenter is Claudia Treviño Garcia, and she talks about the best organization, right? And how the best organization helped her form an identity as an educator, as a leader and a mentor, right? And she says, Beso cleared the pathway to grow my potential to become a change agent, advocate, and leader for my San Antonio community, especially in our most underserved areas of our city. Um, I thought that was I thought that was a very powerful quote. She mentions how this organization helped her become who she is, and she mentions that at one point she didn't think that she could reach the position that she is at now. She probably even think about it, and because of this organization saw the potential in her and what she could be. They she became the president of the best organization in her school, which is amazing, right? Um, and then she talks about the agents of change, and it's something that I wanted to bring to my critical analysis, is because it's something that we have talked about in our in our class before, and we have heard Doctora Machado Casas talk about it as well, and she Ms. Trevino Gonzalez says that we must have high expectations for all our students by presenting information and curriculum in a way that engages students to the best of their ability. So what I got from this is that that we should have certain expectations for our students, that we should definitely let them know that they're capable of doing and reaching their goals, right? That they have the potential for it. And the curriculum also must reflect and integrate diverse cultures and experiences in a variety of lessons. And I completely agree with that, because if we base our curriculum in a way that they could connect with it, they'll be able to grasp the subject better, and they'll be able to learn more from it, and also be enticed to learn more about it, which I thought was cool. And then the next point that I wanted to analyze was brought up by one of the presenters, and it states that, and sorry, the presenters for this one, there are, sorry, by Deborah Palmer, sorry, and Catherine Henderson, and they talk about the myth of bilingualism, right? And it says young bilingual children are delayed in learning language compared to peers who only speak one language. So we kind of saw this myth in the film that we saw called Immersion, and the young boy named Moises, who doesn't know the language but was able to grasp what the teacher was saying based off like key words. And then when he answered the question correctly, he couldn't say how he got to that answer. So and the children began to laugh at him, and it just kind of shows you how some people would think, because of that being bilingual, the learning of the child is delayed. But I mean, we see that Moises was able to get the right answer without really knowing what the teacher was saying, just of clues that he was able to gather. And then Moises also used one of the four conceptual interpretations that was talked about in the presentation, which is syllabic, right? He was able to put a sentence together based off his minimal accumulation of the English language. And it speaks a lot for Moises that he was able to do that. And then the next one that I want to talk about, it's language ideologies as well, right? And it says, muchas veces avanzan los intereses políticos y económicos de grupos dominantes o en poder. And we saw that in the Lemon Grove incident, with the political system and the school district obviously showed the extent of their racism, right, by trying to separate the Hispanic students away from the white students. And it got to the point that even parents were afraid that they make sure that their kids knew English and kind of forget about Spanish, because they didn't want them to stand out. So we see how that political structure could be stacked against minorities, and it's obviously something that's horrible, and in our current day and age is unacceptable, and we shouldn't take that anymore. And then Another point by Mrs. Palmer, Mrs. Anderson, when talking about critical consciousness, they say it's a shifting, messy, hopeful foundation for dual language bilingual education. So as teachers, we should show and acknowledge the systemic oppression and injustices that it's still in our current system. And we need to work to understand our role within that system and make sure that we speak out against it, right? That we're not going to be comfortable with it anymore, and letting our students know that they shouldn't be comfortable with it either. And the way that they could advance forward is by fulfilling their goals when it comes to school and getting an education. Um, so yeah, that is my presentation, and thank you very much.